solitary landscape. Now, this was my first master's degree project, and it was also done during the pandemic. So, as you can imagine, doing a master's degree in the pandemic, when it's a photography master's degree, is not the easiest thing in the world to do. So, what's it about? Well, basically, I'd seen on the television all these people in their own individual bubbles being allowed to go out to exercise, but they had to stay in their bubble, so you weren't allowed to mix. And this meant that you could still be lots of people out in the same place, but they're all in their individual bubbles, so they can't mix. And this is the premise of this particular project, because people were driving like hundreds of miles to Snowdonia National Park, and you could see people are taking pictures, and there's like little pairs of people all over the mountain. And that's where this project sort of came to mind. I used a variety of different cameras for this as well, so I didn't just use a full frame 5D Mark II, but also a D5300 and a D7100 as well. Right then, I think we'll just move on to the next slide now. Okay, so as you can see, this is taken on the South Downs in October, I think. And this is a prime example of what I was talking about with people being in their own bubbles. You'll notice that in all the other pictures in this particular project, it's like pairs of people, or they're on their own. Never more than 2 people, and obviously never less than 1, otherwise there's nobody. Though of course it's not that easy to spot all the time. So, what can I say about this picture? Well, you've got the Stenning Bowl on the left, though you can't really see it, and you're looking east and slightly northeast, so but you're basically looking east towards Devil's Dyke and the Brighton, basically. Now, what I liked about this picture was you had this overcast, cloudy day. Had these 2 people out for a walk who might not necessarily normally go out for a walk, but they're stuck at home, being furloughed, so they're working from home. That would be the other thing, they're working from home, and they're missing that social interaction, that moving around, so they go out for a walk, and they're in the landscape by themselves, so they're solitary in the landscape. And so this is basically, I think this is the opening image of the actual project as well. Well, this is basically what it is. We'll move on to the next picture and talk a bit more about what I mean by that. Okay. So as you can see from this picture, there is 2 people in it. They're right on the horizon there, at the top of the hill. And the reason I chose this picture as part of my project is because you have the bare ploughed field on one side, this streak of grass that we're allowed to walk along on the other side, and then you have this barbed wire fence and more green fields just off on the side as well. And that kind of epitomises the South Downs in general. It is a very strange place to walk around, because you can see so much of it, but you can access so little of it. And this is a prime example of that, where you can walk along the public footpath. You wouldn't really want to walk in that field, it's not very easy, and you can't access what's on the other side. And yeah, those 2 people there, they actually walked past me and I just stood there having taken the previous photo, and that's what's really weird. It was all cloudy on one side and all bright blue sky on the other, which is very strange. But yes, going into more about this the project Solitary Landscape, I found it quite interesting that during the lockdown, well, not the lockdowns, but during the pandemic when we weren't allowed to mix, so many people were out and about. They weren't locking themselves away, hiding away from the dreaded COVID. They were out walking their dogs, walking their children, walking with their partners, and I find that it's a contradiction. You know, you're not supposed to be, you're supposed to be hiding away, and yet everybody's all over the place. And it was quite hard to actually get pictures of just one or two people on their own because there were so many people around. This particular area for the first two photos leads down to a local pig farm, a huge pig farm you can see from the main road at the bottom of the hill. But not very many people walk it, which is why I chose this particular path for the start of my project. It was very, very odd to see so many people all around, but when you go down one particular path, there's just no one there. Right, I think we'll move on to the next slide now. Right, now this was taken on the other side of the valley to where the first two photos were taken. And this is actually part of the South Downs Way, so you get a lot more people on it, regardless of whether it was a pandemic or not. And even though you probably can't see in the video, there is somebody there. The horizon looks wonky, but trust me, it's not wonky. It's just the hill is not flat. So if you go up to roughly the middle of the picture, just below the horizon, you might be able to make out there's someone there. Now this is, like I said, this is one of the more popular routes because it's part of the South Downs Way. You get a lot of cyclists. They cycle from Devil's Dyke all the way up to the top of the hill there, and then they cycle down this slope and they cross the main road and they go over the River Ada, past St Botolph's Church, which is one of the oldest, I think it's a chapel actually, it's one of the oldest ones in existence, one of the few left, and it's actually in the Domesday Book. But yes, going back to this, how did this play into the project? Well, I liked there's a bit of symmetry, I suppose, with the lines in the chalk and the grass, and you have this fence going down either side, and again, how even though we were allowed to mix, we had all these restrictions, and this kind of epitomizes the restrictions, only it's a different kind of restriction. Instead of it being a restricting of people, it's a restriction of access. So the fields either side you can't go in, much like you couldn't go in someone's house or someone's car. You weren't allowed to mix, and this is kind of a symbolic kind of image, this, in that you can only stay down this strict line. You're not allowed to go there, you're not allowed to go there, but you can go along this bit. And so that's why this picture's in this particular project as well. It's actually in another project which we'll see later on, another project, the second project I did for my masters, but we'll come on to that one on a later day. For now, we'll just deal with this one. But yes, this is very much a representation in the landscape itself of the time we were living in. Restrictions, hemmed in, limited freedom. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide now. Okay, now this slide was actually very difficult to capture because there were so many people here. This is, if you don't know what this is Sisbury Hill, or Sisbury Ring, sorry, from which you can see Worthing in the west, and you can, on a good day, see all the way across towards Brighton and Seaford. And the Seven Sisters country park even on a really clear day. But yes, this is a very, very popular place for people who would come and walk their dogs and just be out in the countryside. And again, because we were in a pandemic, you know, people were flocking to places that they could go outside, walk around, see pretty things, get away from the pressure and the thinking about well, you know, dying, obviously, because even at this time, the whole time this project was done, there were no vaccines at this time. So I think I had the first one. Actually, am I that one then? Oh, you know what? I can't remember now. Anyway, there was loads of people. If you go onto my website and click on the solitary landscape project, you'll see this picture and a whole bunch of others that were taken there, and you'll be able to see that there were lots and lots of people there. So this was a very hard one to capture. And this was a couple that walked past me as I was taking photos there, and they were completely oblivious to everybody else there, just inside their own bubble, as we were all supposed to be again. And yeah, I did this with them looking out across the north and onto the South Downs, still out into the fields. It's sort of a symbolic picture, I would say, really. Sort of people looking away, not wanting to confront the harsh reality of the situation we were in, but at the same time doing it together, because we were all in it together. And that was another theme that I was trying to convey in this project, that even though we're all in our own little bubbles, we were all in it together, and we're all going to get out of it together. And it was only the selfish few that were trying to spoil it all for the rest of us. Okay, so this final image. It's an elderly gentleman sat on a bench under a tree. This is Sisbury Ring again. This is actually further around from the previous photo. You might even have... No, it's not in it. But this kind of invokes certain feelings. I suppose, I mean, couples were losing loved ones all the time, and you just have this lone figure sat under a tree, contemplating, perhaps contemplating their own life, perhaps thinking about someone that they lost, or someone that was, you know, very ill at the time. But that kind of again epitomised the situation we were in, and reminded me of what happened to a family member of mine who didn't die of COVID, but unfortunately died of cancer. And my mum was telling me how she couldn't go to his funeral, which was horrible, you know. Her own brother, she couldn't go to his funeral. And that was the same for so many people. And this kind of reminds me of that, and might remind you of that even. Just that tiny lone figure under a tree. I mean, if you wanted to really read anything into it, you could say, that's the tree of life, and that's what they're sitting under, and perhaps that is. But I mean, it's entirely up to your own interpretation. Okay, and that's that. If you visit my website, details there on screen, you'll be able to see this project in a bit more detail and more photos of it, as these are only a selection. Bit more of an explanation and how it developed, and more about my thoughts about it. There's also other work on there, the other project that I'll be talking about in my next video. So yes, thank you very much for watching if you managed to get this far, and I hope to have you for the next one.